I am the managing editor at her campus. I've been here for 2 years now, and I am a third year business major.
And I am Beth. I am the senior editor for her campus. This is my first year doing it, and I am a fourth year English honors and writing major. So lots of words, lots of editing. So yeah, this is going to be a quick talk on editing your academic papers. So we'll be talking today about structural edits, so that Maddie will be covering that. Then I'll be talking about grammatical edits and other small things, and then we'll talk about final like read-throughs and a few tips.
First thing, obviously, is you have to start your paper before you can edit it. And honestly, like this is kind of the hardest part because you know your topic, you know what you're supposed to do with your rubric, but it's tough to get your ideas down. So the biggest thing when you want to start is, what is the purpose of your paper? So are you analyzing a topic? Are you telling someone about a topic? Are you arguing a point or just explaining something? So identify that first, and then also identify who your audience is. So if it's just your professor, then it's an academic paper, or is it going to be read for research purposes? Could it be someone who knows nothing about the topic? This is kind of an easy way to start writing because you can explain things in simple terms and avoid that technical jargon that might come along with your topic. And you know, you may have another audience as well, so just think of that. What's your thesis? Beth's going to get into that in a little bit. And there's an acronym called BOOL that helps you starting a paper. So the first thing is to organize, brainstorm, organize, which counts to 2 O's because it's important to organize your ideas and make sure you have them ready. And then also label. So have your headings and subheadings ready to go so that when you start to put in the content of your paper, things are nicely organized and easier to edit. Okay, so starting with your thesis statement. This is a pretty challenging thing to do, I think. And again, this is going to depend on the type of paper that you're writing and the type of class that you're in. But the way that I like to do it is to basically have sort of 3 ideas in my thesis statement that my paper is going to center around. So your thesis obviously identifies what you're going to be writing about. So I like to center it around sort of 3 main ideas to help not only guide the reader, but then also guide my writing going forward. So for example, the life of the typical college student is characterized by time spent studying, attending class, and socializing with peers. So in this case, we have those 3 ideas: time spent studying, attending class, and socializing with peers. And then therefore you can go forward and start to edit and organize your paper according to those 3 topics. So it just makes it easier. And then your topic sentences. Also a really tough thing to do, but honestly, I find that doing these last actually helps because obviously your topic sentence is introducing what you're going to talk about in that paragraph. And by doing it last, you can identify those main ideas and then kind of summarize them or find a way to summarize them that prepares the reader to actually read those points, if that makes sense. And as it says on the slides, I won't read it out, but identifies the main point and general idea that the paragraph contains. So again, you're just giving the reader a bit of a taste on what this topic is, but letting them kind of get to it themselves. Okay, and then when it comes to your structure and your body paragraphs, you're obviously going to have as many as you need to have in that paper. But there's sort of 4 main things that you need to have in each paragraph. And this goes with an acronym TTEB. So transition sentence. So again, like transitioning one paragraph to the next, finding a way to really make things flow. Then you're gonna have your topic sentence, like we talked about before, and then specific evidence and analysis. And this is what's going to support your ideas that you're introducing in that paragraph. And it's kind of like the meat, I guess, of your paragraph. It's really like the bulk of what you're trying to introduce. And then sort of a wrap-up sentence or concluding sentence that summarizes your ideas and helps lead to the next transition sentence.
Perfect. Thank you, Maddie. And so I will now be talking about the grammar stuff. So once you've kind of organized your paper and edited for larger structural things, these are just some, not all, of the things that you should maybe watch out for as you're rereading your essay and getting ready to hand it in. So first of all, sentence structure. So the most basic thing that professors are going to be looking at is your sentence structure. So each sentence needs a noun and a verb to be considered a proper sentence. So, basic sentences: the student studied for an exam. Noun is the student, studied is the verb. This is a complete sentence. As we get into more complex sentences, though, sentence structure gets to be a little bit more confusing. So here we have two separate clauses. So we have the student studied for the exam and the professor still gave them a C. Those are two complete sentences, and they're conjoined by the but in this sentence. So comma splices. Again, one of the most common grammatical errors that I've seen in other people's papers and occasionally in my own as well is the comma splice, which is when the writer uses a comma to bridge two complete sentences rather than using another word to join them. So in the example that I was using earlier, the student studied for the exam, comma, the professor gave them a C anyway. That is an incorrect sentence because there should be another word in between those two sentences to bridge them together. So a few ways to fix this. So you can make them into two separate sentences, so nice and easy. As long as they're both complete sentences, they can be separated with a period. So in this case, the student studied for the exam, the professor gave them a C anyway. So you can see we have the period in the middle there. Then we get into fanboys. So fanboys is an acronym for what is called coordinate conjunctions, which are words that join two sentences together. So there's for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. And we will be linking, or we will be giving people access to this slideshow. So if you're interested in looking a little bit more closely at that slide, there you will have access to it. So in this example, I used but to bridge the two. So the student studied for the exam, but the professor gave them a C anyway. So the conjunction is, it's kind of just to explain what the relationship between the two sentences are, or the two clauses are. Why have you put them together into one sentence? So another thing to watch out for is formal tone. So do not use contractions in a formal essay. So examples include don't, you would use do not, or she is rather than she's, they are rather than they're. So another easy thing to just kind of skim your paper for, make sure that you haven't used any contractions. Another big one is subject-verb agreement. So as we discussed before, every complete sentence has a subject and a verb. And the important thing is to make sure that your verb matches your subject. And this sounds self-explanatory, but sometimes with longer sentences, when you have little phrases in the middle, it's easy to lose track of what the subject is, or like if it's a plural or not. So in the example that I've used, this is actually an example from a paper that I wrote and did wrong. So her tone, which is rife with anxiety and longing, is achieved through diction. So in this case, tone is the subject, is the verb. However, because there's that middle section, which is rife with anxiety and longing, it's easy to think that maybe anxiety and longing are the subject of the sentence, in which case the verb would become plural. So going through your paper and making sure, like looking at each verb and looking to see what subject it's matching up with is really important, because it's one of those little things that'll throw a reader off if done incorrectly. Another thing, passive voice. So use active verbs. This is super important in any kind of writing. So the general rule for this is to check for to be verbs. So is, are, was, were, and so on and so forth, or will be. So again, in the student studying example, the student studied is way snappier and clearer than the student was studying. Unless the student was studying can be used in conjunction with another sentence, but in general, you want to use active verbs whenever possible. Something that a lot of people don't think about is the word it. Never start a sentence with the word it. Because the thing about the word it is that it's not entirely clear what the word it refers to. So you may think that, oh, it's obvious that it refers to this subject, but your reader may not. So in the example here, it is clear to the reader that becomes the reader understands. This also forces you, as I was talking about before, to write more actively, so using more active verbs and thinking, and it also forces you to think about the point of the sentence. So why is it important that it is clear to the reader? It's important because the reader understands. Another really small thing that I didn't know about before I started university is never start a sentence with this. Again, you might assume that the reader is going to understand what this refers to, but they might not actually understand that it refers to what you think it does. So in the example, I use the quote, "They lived happily ever after." This demonstrates becomes, "They lived happily ever after." This quote or this passage, other things include, "This technique demonstrates." So in this case, you can see that I've put an extra word in to make sure that the reader knows what the "this" is referring to in the sentence. So a couple of little final tips. Read your paper aloud. Like, people, like, it sounds weird. Genuinely, it is so helpful. It really helps you read out this, like, the longer sentences, maybe add some periods if like they've gotten really, really long. And it helps you hear it out loud, and you'll catch things that you might otherwise miss. Another alternative is to have your word processor or like Google Translate it, read it aloud for you. Which again, you're going to catch like those little spelling errors and grammatical errors that you might have missed otherwise. And yeah, be kind to your reader. Your reader wants to understand what's going on, and they shouldn't have to dig through your sentences and paragraphs to understand what you're saying. Always write with a reader in mind. Papers are always written to be read by someone else. Even if the reader is just your prof, they want to understand what you're saying. So we've included some links here. Maddie, do you want to talk a little bit about these?
Yeah, so we have a couple slides. We have one for writing an APA paper and one for writing papers for business courses, because that is generally different. So just a couple of important things. These are the things that I tend to need help with the most. So headings, citations, footnotes and endnotes, and a sample paper just for you to see kind of what your paper should ultimately look like formatting wise. And on these sites, if you click on the source, it'll show you way more links that are really helpful. So yeah, on the left, you can see sorry, just scroll down a bit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can see in-text citations, the basics, reference list ideas, it's super helpful. There's everything on there that you need. If you just click on one of those links.
There we go. We will go back to that. There we go.
And then there's one for a business course. And all of these links have just sort of more specialized information that you'll need, that courses writing, I think it's called English 220 or something cover, but if you're not taking one of those, these will help you out a lot.
That's all we've got for today. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
All right, bye.
Bye.